Today, we're diving into an ancient verse, but not as a story. We're going to treat it as something else entirely. A precise set of instructions, almost like a hidden algorithm. It's a puzzle, really, one that tackles one of the biggest questions out there. So, let's get into it.
Right. So the entire premise of what we're talking about today hinges on this one really powerful idea, that this specific verse isn't just telling a story about a miracle. No, it's describing a procedure. It's a blueprint for a transformation.
So, let's set the scene. The prophet Ibrāhīm asks Allah, "Show me how you give life to the dead." Now, Allah immediately confirms that Ibrāhīm already believes. So this isn't a request coming from a place of doubt. It's a request for a totally different kind of knowledge, a certainty that would finally set his heart at rest. The real question is, what kind of knowledge actually does that? And Allah's answer isn't some deep philosophical explanation. It's a command, a procedure broken down into these really clear, distinct steps you see here. Take 4 birds, cut them up, place them on separate mountains, and then call them. You know, this sounds way less like a mystical story and a lot more like a transformation pipeline, almost like an experiment with a very specific process. And that brings us to the central question, doesn't it? What kind of process actually requires total destruction before it can be put back together? Why these specific, methodical steps? Well, to find the answer, we have to look past the surface and into the world of mathematics. Okay, so if we're going to model something like this, we need the right kind of mathematical tool. A simple straight-line function, what's called a linear model, it just won't cut it. As you can see, it only goes in one direction. It can't possibly account for a process that involves a complete reversal. To model death and resurrection, you need something with a lot more complexity, something that can go down, turn a corner, and come all the way back up again. And that, right there, brings us to the cubic function. Now, forget the complicated-looking formula for a second, and just look at the shape. This is the simplest, the minimum mathematical structure that can actually do what we need it to do. It's got multiple turning points, which lets it model the whole process: separation, reversal, and finally, reassembly. It can handle both destruction and return, all within one single elegant equation. So, let's go back to the verse for a second. Allah's command was incredibly specific. Not 2 birds, not 10. He said take 4 birds. So why 4? Well, think about it. A simple linear function has 2 parts, 2 coefficients. A quadratic has 3. And a cubic function, well, it has 4. And here it is. This is the crucial insight. The 4 birds aren't just animals in a story. In this model, they represent the 4 essential components of that cubic function: the A, B, C, and D. They are the state variables that define the entire process of transformation. Okay, this slide right here is the absolute heart of this entire analysis. Let's break down exactly how the verse maps to the function. Just look at the table. We'll start with D, the constant. This is the bird's essential identity, its essence, which never actually changes. Then you've got CX, the linear term. This corresponds to the call, the force that guides all the pieces back together. Next up is bx squared, the quadratic term. This models the scattering, the dispersal, the death phase. And finally, the most powerful term of all, ax cubed. That represents the irreversible cut, the divine command that kicks the whole thing off. So what this gives us is a crystal clear transformation pipeline. First, you have the cut, which is driven by that powerful cubic term. Next is the scatter, where the quadratic term takes over and manages the separation. Then comes the call, where the linear term kicks in and creates this vector of attraction, pulling everything back. And through all of it, the core identity, that constant D, is completely preserved, which is what makes the return possible in the first place. So, the most important point here is this. The model is proposing that identity is invariant. It doesn't change, even when the physical form is completely and utterly destroyed. The essence, represented by that constant D, is never lost. It's preserved through the whole chaotic process. But wait, what about the other parts of the command? Why the mountains? Why place the pieces on separate mountains? Well, this detail isn't random at all. It serves a really critical function in this whole experimental model. In this scientific reading, the mountains are basically experimental controls. They act as fixed reference points, like anchors. Think of them like the 4 corners of a grid. By placing the pieces at these specific, known locations, you prevent any random errors or, accidental recombination. This isn't just a mystical detail. It's what makes the entire process verifiable, repeatable, and fundamentally scientific, not magical. And this completely reframes Ibrāhīm's request, doesn't it? He already had belief. He had faith in Allah's power. What he was asking for was stability. He wanted to witness the predictable, lawful mechanics of the system itself. He didn't just want to believe in the outcome, he wanted to see the function execute. And there's actually a formal concept for this in systems theory. It's called stability analysis. It's the whole process of verifying that a function guarantees a specific output, that its return path is proven and totally predictable. This is the kind of certainty a scientist or an engineer looks for, and it's the exact kind of certainty that brings a heart to rest. So the conclusion of all this analysis is pretty profound. What we're looking at in Qur'ān 2:260 is Allah teaching Ibrāhīm the transfer function of resurrection. It's not just a raw display of power, it's a deep lesson in the underlying elegant mathematics of existence itself. This changes everything. In this model, life isn't just continuous matter, it's addressable information. Death isn't the end, it's not annihilation, it's just state separation. And resurrection, it isn't magic, it's a state recall. It's a computation. So that final step, the call, is completely recontextualized. It becomes an act of information retrieval. It's kind of like calling up a specific file from a hard drive. The identity is the address, and when you call it, the form is perfectly put back together based on the information that was never, ever lost. Okay, so let's just quickly recap what we've uncovered here. This verse isn't a simple story. It's a model for a nonlinear process. The 4 birds represent the 4 key coefficients of a cubic function. We learned that the core identity is an invariant constant that's never lost. And maybe most importantly, we saw that real certainty, the kind that truly sets a heart at rest, comes from witnessing a predictable system in action, not just believing in a claim. And all of this leads to the ultimate takeaway from this whole mathematical decoding, that in this framework, resurrection isn't simply a promise to be believed, it is a demonstrated algorithm. This is the kind of certainty Ibrāhīm witnessed. A universe governed by divine law that is predictable, stable, and ultimately knowable. So this analysis leaves us with a question from another verse entirely. When will you hold the book? It's really asking us to think about the difference between simply believing something is true and truly grasping the knowledge it contains. Thanks for joining us.